We now continue with Smurf.
I cannot tell you exactly where this happened to me. Call me a coward if you want, but even though this happened so long ago, and I can barely believe what I witnessed, I am still scared. Scared that someone could still find me all too easily. I think if they wanted to kill me back then they could have, and just decided that scaring me into silence would raise less questions. I will try and be as specific as I can, and not leave out anything as long as it does not identify me. I worked as a fire lookout, or Firewatch as I have seen lots of people referring to it as now, for around 3 seasons or so in the mid to late 1990s. I was young and really hated my home life, so it was a way to earn some decent money in the summer away from my overbearing parents, and really just feel a sense of independence. Pretty much the only things I had in my tower was a radio, so that I could check in for roll call at various points in the day, a pair of binoculars, and a notepad. I would also occasionally get a heads up for weather warnings and potential people in my area, etc. Now, this last season was a little bit different and caused a bit of confusion for me. There was a paperwork mix-up as I found out later, and I was told that my regular tower was scheduled to be decommissioned. They wanted me up at a different tower to cover another area, not realizing that was the tower that was actually scheduled to be decommissioned for part of the season. I honestly don't understand how they managed such a major screw-up, but hey, that's none of my business as long as they pay me, right? It was a fairly remote area, much more remote than my previous posting. It wasn't completely unreachable, but unlike other towers, I had pretty much no one close by within walking distance. You would have to wait a long time before anyone showed up if you called for them. My tower was, how do I put this? Absolutely overrun by forest and was completely surrounded by it. When I got to it, I did a double take and asked my supervisor again if this was right, and he pulled out some paperwork and confirmed. Man, there were some damn vines growing around the pillars of the fire tower, and the grass was so high it came up to my midriff. Okay, maybe I am a little on the shorter side, but that's besides the point. I felt like a little grasshopper waiting to be trampled on walking around there. The tower smelled like shit too and was a mess. My supervisor was basically just like, yeah, that sucks for you. You are just gonna have to clear it up. Why were alarm bells not ringing in his head? Why would they want me to cover this area that looked left to the animals? Anyway, further down in my area there were some shallow clearings where fires had burned through in previous years. They were thankfully all stopped before they got out of hand, but you could still tell and see the marks. You could see a long-ass way from my tower, and especially at nighttime with the binoculars. It was actually kind of a rush, just looking down on so much vast wilderness, and just seeing things. The first few weeks flew by pretty routinely. I got up, I did roll call, I took a whiz around the side of my tower, I did a couple of walks around the area here and there, just to familiarize myself. It was pretty nice. I had my little notepad to log weather conditions, whether there were any lightning strikes, if any controlled burns started up, and making sure that they fizzled out. And I would obviously radio these in when I could, but the radio that I got in here was a piece of shit. It was always cutting out and picking up static, or sometimes even what sounded like wrong channels. Really, really annoying. Now, at night, I did hear a truck once or twice moving down access roads that did not appear on my map. I didn't even know they were there till this season. But I honestly did not start paying closer attention to things in my area until I saw the first odd fire. I mean, even when I saw it, it did not click in my brain that something was truly wrong at first. I just thought it was a mistake or an accident. So this one night after midnight, I get woken up. I'm a pretty light sleeper, and so any slight noise or disturbance is enough to rouse me. Now, I get up because I hear some slight movement. I'm just talking the rustling of some foliage and maybe some steps nearby, but not like right underneath my tower. I get up and take a peek, and before I even put the binoculars to my face, I can see this faint glow low to the ground in the distance. I just want to emphasize that we are well out of the way, and it would take a while for anyone to reach us. No one can see anything out in this section, aside from me, obviously. There's a burn, but it's really oddly contained. It doesn't look like a natural sudden spark, and it's not climbing or racing or threatening to spread. It's literally just sitting there, and it's this almost circular burn. It looked like it had been set deliberately. I was trying my best not to panic, but I was internally, just a little bit. What can I say? I'm a warrior. So I radioed it in and gave every detail as best as I could. I thought my radio had screwed up again, because there was a long line of silence and almost a delay before I was told anything. I knew they had heard me though, because they responded initially. I was then told that there were no reports of people in the area. I was told it was probably nothing, but to keep an eye on things. That burn went on for hours and hours. I think I remember I did not get back down to sleep until around 3 or 4 a.m. The flame never spread and burned down into the ground rather than out. By the time I woke up again, there was only a dark patch on the ground that I could just barely make out from where I was. There was no smoke or residual haze or anything either. Later that day, I decided that it was best to hike out and check around the area. I wanted to check and see if something fishy was going on. When I got to the area that I saw the burn, which was tucked away and out of sight to anyone but my tower, I found the ground baked hard and blackened in a way I had never seen before. The soil had bubbled in places, like it had been overheated and then cooled too fast. It smelled, I'm talking really bad. It smelled like someone had burned an animal carcass out here. That's not all though. There were impressions in the dirt that did not match anything I recognized, and they were obviously not boot prints. They were from something heavy, it looked like. They were like shallow trenches where something had been dragged or pressed down repeatedly. Mixed into the ash were these whitish fragments that I initially thought were animal bones. They were blackened, presumably from the burn, but they did not look like anything I've ever seen on an animal. They were small but really heavy, and when I touched them, they felt almost greasy. That's not all though, because a little further down, way off where you would not even see them unless you were right up against them, I found some tire tracks embedded into the ground. It looked like someone had tried to cover them half-heartedly by kicking up dirt and digging in their heels and stuff, but just gave up after a minute. I was told to bag them so that animals would not get a hold of them or scatter them elsewhere. I bagged a few of these fragments and logged it as unidentified remains from a burn. I radioed it in on a channel direct to my supervisor, but they were weird about it. I was told not to mention them or show them to anyone. The rationale was that it was probably nothing, and we would only cause panic and chaos to both visitors and other lookouts. I was told just to keep them there, and that he would sort out the rest. Only, he never even bothered to come down here, so I had to sleep with this shit in the same room as me, which kinda unsettled me a little. After that, I started to notice a lot more odd things at night. I noticed more controlled burns spark up in odd ways that always took care of themselves. I noticed more movement at night, and let me tell you, these were not hikers. I caught the flash of something reflective, and just the silhouette of what looked like a vehicle. They had been using the unmarked access roads without their lights on, and it had been going on for a night or two. I was starting to put 2 and 2 together, but did not want to jump to any conclusions. My supervisor though, he was getting nervy, but not because of what I told him. He said that it was fine and to just ignore it. He gave me some BS half-assed excuse about woodland preservation and something else that I can't remember, but I did not call him out on it. He told me to sit tight and keep to myself for a couple more days, then he would move me out of that tower. I left the tower anyway that night. I really couldn't help myself. I went over to investigate the area, making sure not to use my flashlight unless absolutely necessary. Honestly, I wish I never had. There had been no activity that night, and so I thought I was in the clear. I got pretty far out without seeing much of anything, except where previous burns had been. Someone had been sloppy, because there were boot prints all around this area. You could see them around the ash and the scorch marks. There were drag marks leading up from the access roads nearby, and the sight I saw before me made me reel away and vomit. I don't know how the tree nearby had not caught fire, it was so close. I saw what I could only describe as a person or what was left of one. I don't think that this was supposed to happen. I think the burn had stopped too early due to the sudden winds that night. The skin was just completely blackened and shrunken. Parts of the skin were split and peeling away, and was exposing bits of bone underneath that were also charred. The corpse looked tiny. It had shrunken down so small it barely looked human anymore. The lower half of the body, these parts, the skin was almost entirely peeled away and were now just bones, only not all of them were there. The smell was enough to make me have to cover my face the entire time. The bones had become calcined, I think that's the word for it. I only know that word because I looked it up while typing the story out, which basically just means they had become more brittle and porous, but this meant they had fused to something nearby. Like, one of the arm bones was fused into something. Metal, maybe. It looked like it was fused into something. Like it had been restrained to something metal, and they had now fused together because of the heat melting them. There was a hole in the tree that this body was burned next to. I found a few scattered bones jammed into it, all in various states, some being only a few broken up pieces. I think the thing that sticks in my brain was the face. I could still make out some of the face. Half of the skin was peeled away, exposing the lower jaw and lower half of the skull. The eyeballs themselves had been reduced to just ash, but I could almost make out a terrified look from what skin remained, but I think that was just my horrified brain filling in the blanks. I shit my pants when I heard rustling nearby and the slam of a car door a little further down the road. Someone was still nearby and was not finished here. I had to quickly switch off my flashlight and duck for cover. I pretty much crawled the whole way back, I was that frightened. Now, at this point, any normal person would report this in, but I didn't, which was very stupid, but in a weird way, I think it also saved my life. My supervisor was being weird. I had a really off feeling about something, and I grew up being told to always trust my gut in bad situations. There was clearly something going on here. I had already reported numerous things and been brushed off. I felt like maybe he knew something, or maybe I just imagined that. The other reason is because there was a big part of me attempting to remain in denial, that I imagined things, that my brain got scared and made something up. And also, if I stayed in denial, I would not have to face reality or get involved. So I just made notes. I did not want to report anything before my supervisor moved me to another tower where I would be safe. Also, I was explicitly told I was not allowed to leave the tower at night. No one is unless it's an emergency, and I desperately needed the money and did not want to go back to my parents already. Things were pretty quiet for a couple of days. From where I was, I could not see a trace of what I saw the other night, aside from the burn. I was really on edge all day long, and sleeping that night was impossible. Being a light sleeper combined with being on edge does not make for a good recipe. I heard these hushed whispers and something muffled, like someone was trying to keep themselves quiet. I knew I should just try to sleep, but I could not ignore it. I needed to know. I did not get close, but I got close enough to see. I saw one of those trucks roll in this time, actually in here instead of just on the access roads. I saw people. It must have been a group of 3 or 4 men, but it was hard to tell in the darkness. I could not even really tell what they were wearing. I saw them unload something from the truck, but I know it took all of them to lift it out of the truck. It was, wrapped in something, and it was squirming or swaying. At the time, I had no idea, but I could hear more sounds faintly. It sounded like someone breathing really heavily, and again, something just muffled. And I heard someone hit something, but it was dulled by whatever material they hit. I tried to inch a little bit closer. My eyes were kind of adjusting to the dark, but not very much. There was something in some kind of a tarp or a sleeping bag or something, and it looked big. It looked about human size. It was sagging in the middle when they carried it. That is what made me jump to this conclusion. By this point, I was in full panic mode. By this point, I could just about make out that they were all wearing these same coveralls, and they had something covering their faces. It looked like some kind of material draped over with holes cut out, or that's what I assumed at least. They whispered to each other here and there, but pure silence other than that. They slammed whatever it was down to the ground with a thud, and I definitely heard something inside make a muffled noise. They took the bundle into the clearing and set it down near a shallow pit that had already been dug. By now, the movement inside had become more frantic. Whatever it was twisting, and I saw an imprint of something kicking out at the bag and trying to break free. One of them took a knife to it and cut it open. It was a person. They were gagged and had their hands restrained behind their back, and they dragged this person to their feet before pinning them to the floor. I saw one of them inject something, I think, into the person, and after that they did not even resist. They also, and I could be wrong because it was so long ago and I could not see fully clearly, it looked like they took a sample of this person. Like they took a knife to their skin and cut off a chunk and just sealed it in something. I was too frightened to even turn my eyes away at this point. This person, while they were lying in the shallow pit, they took their arms and hammered them into the ground. They took these metal sticks and put them through the wrists and the ankles. The person woke up pretty much immediately from the pain or whatever. Whatever they gave them did not work, or was not supposed to work in that way anyway. I saw the person squirming and trying to free themselves, but all they did was cause more damage and rip what looked to be a bigger hole in themselves. There was blood and little specks of flesh just flying off them. Then the men poured something over the person, but I could not smell gasoline or diesel. It smelled different. It was this sharp chemical odor, and it felt like the hairs on my nose burned off when I smelled it. When they lit it, the body did not flare up. It was a controlled burn. It creeped slowly across the surface and produced almost no smoke. The gag burned away pretty quickly, and I could hear them now. They were coughing and spluttering and producing these sounds I had never heard before. It was like a gurgling mixed with a moaning, and then I saw something that I'm not sure I believe really happened, something that you almost certainly will not believe. I had better visibility now due to the flame, and I saw the face of this person peeling away. I could see their face charring and becoming black, but before that I saw it change is the only way I can really describe it. As the skin started to peel and burn, I saw the head change shape. What had once been just an ordinary looking woman, the head started to change shape and grow bigger. It became big and bulbous and elongated. As the skin burned and peeled away, and the groans became worse, I saw this happen more and more. The men looked panicked, taken aback almost. I saw the skin rip off of her fingers, being peeled back like an orange, and these other fingers came out. They were longer, more slender. They looked barbed or spiked or something. She was just becoming less human, if that makes sense. I saw her eyes literally change shape and become taller, and I swear her skin changed color before she was all gone. I saw her arms change shape and grow as they ripped against these metal stakes. It was just ripping a bigger hole in the arm as it grew. It was horrible to look at. And when the skin changed color before she was all gone, it wasn't being blackened, I mean actually a different color. And she said something. Only she sounded nothing like she did earlier when she was crying and trying to beg for help. Her voice sounded, I don't know, not human. More guttural, making sounds I never heard vocal cords make before. When I heard this, I jumped and accidentally made some noise. I had dropped my flashlight on the ground. I ran off as fast as I could while keeping low to the ground and trying to make as little noise as possible. But I was spotted. I must have been spotted. I heard them say something out loud to each other while I was moving, but I did not hear because of the adrenaline rush and focusing on getting away. When I got to my tower, I tried desperately to reach my supervisor, but all I could get was static and the sounds of voices cutting out. I tried to explain, but I got no response, and none of the channels would work at all. I was too scared to leave. What if they did see me and were looking for me? So I just laid down and tried to quiet my mind, which obviously did not work. I just made lots and lots of notes so I could report it immediately as accurately as possible, although I left out the part about her changing how she looked. At one point, my brain was so exhausted from fear that I guess I just gave in and I finally fell asleep. And I remember waking up in a panic because my nose caught a whiff of smoke and roused me. I could see a trail of fire that had started a little ways away, and it had caught and spread up to my tower. The support pillars were alight, and they were burning up quickly. I just thank God that my radio was working by now. If it wasn't, it could have been so much worse. I managed to get out just before it got too bad, but I breathed in a lot of smoke, and I was wheezing for a couple of days afterward. The fire team got out there pretty quickly, but it was too late to fully save the tower. The supervisor gave me some bullshit spiel about how lightning had been striking in the area and must have caused it. I know that isn't true. I know that shit would have woken me up, and no one else in the area said they heard lightning either. I told my supervisor. I talked to him in his office, if you could call it that. I sat him down, prepped him, showed him my notes, and I told him exactly what I saw. And I shit you not, he just laughed at me. He told me I had experienced something traumatic and was just under too much stress. He told me I had too much of a wild imagination, but that it is not appropriate to make false and serious claims like that on the job. I told him he would find evidence if he went out there. I told him I had reported the truck activity before. I asked him, what about the fragments I found and bagged for you? And he got real serious and quiet for a moment. He looked at me really sternly and he said, "What fragments are you talking about?" I clammed up at that point and was visibly sweating. Motherfucker. Those fragments were still in my tower. I was told that I was being sent home, but that I would be paid for my time. He explained that there had been a mix-up anyway. Someone screwed up the paperwork, and the tower I was sent to was scheduled for decommissioning anyway, but that he already had someone else ready to fill my tower. But here is the part that gets me. How did he have someone else ready to fill my tower so quickly if he thought it was going to be decommissioned? He would not budge. The police had to be on scene due to the nature of the event, just as per protocol. They thought I was crazy too, but I guess I came on too strong. Visibly sweating and rambling about mysterious trucks burning people in the woods is not too convincing. They assured me they were going to be checking out the area thoroughly for any kind of cause. And of course, they found nothing, the useless assholes. When I got home, I did not tell my parents anything beyond the fire to my tower. I did not want to talk about it anymore. I compartmentalized this experience for years and gaslit myself into thinking it did not really happen. But I know it happened. You won't believe me, but I need to know what was really going on there. What the hell did I say? What was actually going on? Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. This happened to me in the summer of 2007 when I was like 12 years old. I was playing games really late and woke up relatively late in the afternoon. I was home alone and woke up feeling weird. Like, you know that weird feeling as a child when you know you did something wrong. I brush it off and get ready for the day. My dad comes home looking worried and kinda scared. I ask him what's wrong. He tells me that my aunt called the restaurant that my family owns and that she sounded hysterical. We head to the restaurant and wait for her to come by since she said she wanted to see if I was alright. Fast forward an hour or so later, my aunt comes running into the restaurant with her hair all wild and pale. She has black hair, so I don't know if that makes sense. She looks disheveled and she is barefoot. She runs up to me and hugs me, shouting things like, "Are you alright?" and "Did he hurt you?" I am standing with my dad in the kitchen at the time, and she looks up at him with this murderous look. "Stay away. I know what you did to him and my children." She picks up a knife and attempts to stab him in the face. My dad blocks her before she can do some serious damage, but she manages to get a good scratch on him. Two guys outside the kitchen see what's happening and try to restrain her. Me and my dad look at each other with a what the hell kind of expression. Somehow, my tiny 5'4" aunt is overpowering these two fully grown men. My dad picks me up and runs me out of the restaurant through the back door. Me and dad are now inside the restaurant screaming. A concerned customer comes outside to check if we are okay, says that the two guys can barely restrain her. My dad is concerned for my safety, so we nope the hell out of there. Back at home, and dad has to go back to the restaurant because mom is taking aunt to our house since it is the closest house. My mom comes home with aunt and her children, so the people at my house at the moment are me, mom, aunt, and my two cousins, my aunt's kids. My aunt sways through the door to the house with like a devilish grin. She looks really creepy. "We are safe," she whispers. My mom tries to get her to lie down in the guest room and rest. My aunt flips out again and starts freaking out on the bed. She is thrashing her limbs and bouncing on the bed. She screams at my mom, "You bitch, you brought him here. It is your fault." She then proceeds to fling a lamp at my mom's face. My aunt jumps out of bed and starts punching my mom in the face. Everybody there is stunned, not knowing what to do. After a couple seconds, I jump over and try to restrain my aunt. Nope. I get thrown off and pushed several feet away. My mom takes all of the kids out of the room and into the living room. We sit there and wait for aunt to calm down. A few minutes later, we hear a loud wail come from the guest room. My aunt runs out crying about how she needs to know if our other cousins are safe. We have to call our cousins to come over so that aunt calms down. There is a momentary respite. Everyone is sitting quietly in the living room. Nobody knows what will set off aunt next. She is sitting on the floor in the corner of the room, rocking back and forth, saying things like, "I saw him do it. They told me that he did it." My aunt freaks out again. She grabs my cousin by the hair and pulls his head back. This is what he did, and she starts thrusting him. It takes my mom, my cousin, and I to restrain her and just barely keep her in a hold. There is a knock on the front door, and it's my three cousins and their mom. I will call her aunt number 2. I thought the aunt would just run over to the cousins that just arrived and make sure that they were okay. Instead, what actually happened was that she started shouting things at aunt number 2 and starts to sprint at her. My eldest cousin takes her mom to their car to escape from aunt. Me and my mom try to restrain her and get her back in the house. She's screaming like bloody murder. At this point, she has made such a ruckus that several neighbors call the cops in concern. 2 cops show up and help us get aunt back in the house. An intense line of questioning follows. They ask things like if she was on any drugs or if there was anything that set her off. Instead of answering, she is just rocking back and forth in her corner. They want to take her to the hospital or a psych ward to get her checked out or something. She freaks out again, but it was worse than the previous times. The cops try to grab her by the arms and take her out of the house, but she is able to fight them off. They call for backup and tell us kids to stay inside the house while my mom and my eldest cousin helps restrain her. This is where my part of the story ends, and the next part is told to me by my cousins. Another squad car shows up to the house, accompanied by an ambulance. The cops are trying to wrestle her into handcuffs. She is twisting her body in a weird way that makes it hard for them to get the cuffs on. They stop trying to handcuff her and instead grab a straitjacket from the ambulance. It takes 4 cops to pin her down and get her in a straitjacket, and they strap her onto a stretcher and take her away. According to the doctor/therapist, she just suffered from a mental breakdown, maybe early onset schizophrenia. They did not find any drugs or anything out of the ordinary. The family thinks that she was possessed by something, since she was talking about they and them. I don't know what is scary, the fact that she may have gotten possessed, or the fact that she might be schizophrenic. On one hand, if she was possessed, that's some spooky shit. On the other hand, if she's schizophrenic, it can be genetically passed on, So I may have the gene, or any of my cousins may have the gene. And the fact that it happens so randomly, it's scary that those things can happen. I've got one, but it might need some explaining for you non-Irish people. The banshee is a type of fairy in Irish mythology that foretells the death of someone near a person that hears her screams. This is my granddad's story from the late 1980s. My granddad is in the hospital in Belfast, recovering from a surgery. There are 3 other men staying in the same room. 2 a.m. rolls around and all is silent. Without warning, he hears a god-awful scream that fills the entire room. He jumps out of the bed, along with the 2 other men, both of which seem equally startled. The scream lasts for about 10 seconds and then there is just nothing. The 3rd man, who did not jump out of bed, asks what the hell they are doing. My granddad tells the men about the scream, and the other 2 back him up, but the 3rd man is not buying it. After about another hour of shitting the bed, they all manage to finally nod off. Early next morning, my granddad is awoken by doctors and nurses rushing into the room and moving the 3rd man to the ER. My granddad asks around later that day. The 3rd man suffered a fatal heart attack. A banshee claimed her victim. I realized Belfast, being a large city, could very easily explain the scream, and the man's heart attack may well have been a coincidence, but stories like this are not uncommon in Ireland, even today, and it's a neat bit of mythology to boot.